I'm thrilled to be joined by the leaders of 9 of the world's largest pharmaceutical manufacturers. All very big names, celebrities in their own right, very, very powerful people, and they head some of the most, admired companies anywhere in the world. It's a great group to announce that they've agreed to offer many of their flagship drugs, really all of their flagship drugs, at heavily discounted, most favoured nations prices. In other words, whatever the drug sells for over the world, in the world, whatever the lowest number is, if it's Germany, if it's in UK, anywhere, we will match that price. Right now, sometimes it's 10 times higher. We've been laughed at and scoffed at for years. For years. In fact, I was going to do it in my first term, but unfortunately, with the advent of COVID, as you would say, it was not. I don't think it was a very good time to be hitting up Spain, Italy, France. But now we're doing it. So, the hardest thing to do was going to be to get a country to do it, because we would have a pill in New York that was for sale for $130, and you could buy it in Germany and France and Spain and someplace. Anyways, they set their own prices for $10. So we'd pay 10 or 13 times more, pay 5 times more, pay all different prices. Now, whatever the lowest price is. Now, the pharmaceutical companies were difficult, but they also love our country. They knew it was unfair. But and they were great. I appreciate it. But the bigger problem is going to be the countries. How are you going to get the countries to do it? And we told them, if you don't do it, we're going to have to use tariffs, and we're going to charge you a 10% tariff, which is far more money than the money we're talking about. And they immediately agreed to do it. So we have all the foreign countries agreeing to do it. If we didn't have the use of tariffs, we would never be able to do this. But we used tariff, and they said, "Is it a threat?" I said, "Yes, it is a threat." And they said, "We will do it," and they dropped the price. So what's happening? Because the world is bigger than the United States. In terms of people, that same pill would go from $10 to $20 for them, which is an increase, but it wouldn't go to, midway, but it would go from $10 to $20. Ours would go from $130 to $20. So we dropped way down. They went up a little bit. And, everyone knows it's the way it is. They, for years, would just say, "No, no, no. As medicine got more expensive for us, it would stay." They said, "Nope, you can't sell it in this country. Let the United States pay." And we had other presidents. All of them said, "Okay, we'll pay." So we were subsidizing the entire world. We're not doing it anymore. This is the biggest thing having to do with drugs in the history of the purchase of drugs. And I don't think the maybe press will treat it as a story. This is the biggest front-page story that you'll ever see. This has a huge bearing too on the healthcare, because a big part of healthcare is drugs, pharmaceuticals, right, Oz? And this. So this will have a tremendous impact on the reduction of healthcare. The biggest impact is going to be that the money should be paid not to the insurance companies, but directly to the people, and the people will buy their own healthcare. So we're going to be working that. The problem is that the Democrats are very much controlled by the insurance companies that make all that money. But we're not going to let that happen. Starting next year, American drug prices will come down fast and furious, and will soon be among the lowest in the developed world. So in other words, whatever the lowest price for a certain drug, of which these companies make much of it, whatever the lowest price is, that price will come down to that price. So we will get the lowest price anywhere in the world. If they're lower in England than they are in Germany, we take the England price. As of today, 14 out of 17 largest pharmaceutical companies have now agreed. 14 out of 17. Oh, those 3 oh, they're in deep trouble. But actually, they've agreed because I think those 3 companies are coming in at a different time next week. So they've agreed. Johnson & Johnson is one of them, right? After the holidays. What? Why? They couldn't do it faster. No, we're going to be talking about Trump RX. Oh, okay. Trump RX. Trump RX is doing well. As of today, 14 out of the 17 largest pharmaceutical companies, but they've all agreed, have now agreed to drastically lower drug prices for their American patients, for the American people and patients. This represents the greatest victory for patient affordability in the history of American healthcare by far. And every single American will benefit. So this is the biggest thing ever to happen on drug pricing and on healthcare. This will have a tremendous impact on healthcare itself. For decades, Americans have been forced to pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs by far. By far, not just a little bit. We were like a whipping post, the United States, and it just been 4% of the world's population. We have 4% of the world's population, and consumers pay only 13% of all prescription drugs. Yet pharmaceutical companies make 75% of their profits. Think of that. So we have 4% of the population, 13% of prescription drugs, and yet the people behind me, who are wonderful people, make 75% of their profits from the American customer. So they understood that better than anybody, that we have to do something. That's why I signed an executive order instructing my administration to do everything in its power to slash prescription drug prices for Americans while getting other countries to pay more. And we want this fair. We want to pay the same thing. They used to blame it, remember, on research and development. And I said, well, research and development for everybody. And everybody understood. And as a result, the United Kingdom's National Health Service agreed to pay the fair share for prescription drugs for the first time in 26 years. And we expect other countries in Europe will do the same. And if they don't, we're going to put tariffs on them, and we'll get the same amount of money. Plus, we'll take a nice return on the money. We signed historic agreements with Pfizer, Eli, Lilly, AstraZeneca, Novo Nordisk and EMD Serrano to reduce prices by 300, 400, 500, 600 and even 700%, and sometimes even more than that. I remember when I had a news conference in my first term. I was the first president that reduced prices from the beginning of my term to a year from January to December 0.25%. And I thought it was the greatest thing because it's the first one in 28 years. Now we're talking about numbers that are so incredible. 0.25%. Think of that. I was proud of it because it hadn't happened in 28, where drug prices went down. Well, now you're going to see numbers that nobody would believe possible. Think of that. 500, 600, 700, 800%. Today, we're building on these accomplishments. The companies assembled in this room have agreed to offer all of their drugs to Medicaid and Most Favored Nations pricing. You're going to get Most Favored Nations pricing, meaning they're going to pay our country the lowest price paid anywhere in the world. And they will list their most popular drugs on trumprx.gov. Trumprx.gov. And I didn't name it that. Somebody named it that. And I guess they assumed that was... Did you name it, Oz? Or Bobby name it? We all named it together. Okay, well, I'm honoured to have the name. And so far that's turned out because the numbers are so incredible. It's an honour. And you're going to get massive discounts onto all consumers. So massive discounts will be not even offered. It's just going to be a fact. All consumers will get massive discounts. That's trumprx.gov. Every new drug produced by these companies in the future will permanently be offered to American patients at most favorite nation prices. You know, people used to talk about that for years, but nobody ever did anything about it. No other president did. And it wasn't easy, but it worked out great. And I'm so proud of the people behind me. As an example of the price reductions we have secured through these new agreements, Santa Fe will cut the cost of its blood thinner, PL, from $750 to less than $16. Wow. At the other countries, the countries will have to pay more. But even for them, because of the fact that the world is quite a bit bigger, it won't be very severe, I hope. I also want to thank these companies and their incredible executives for their generous contribution to American national security, because it's really what it is. It's to a large extent national security. In addition, you can't continue to pay 13, 14 times more than other countries and think you're going to have security. Collectively, they will invest over $150 billion to build up domestic pharmaceutical manufacturing in America. They're going to be because of tariffs. They're coming in, and I think because of the love of our country, and maybe because of the November 5th election, but because of tariffs, they're going to be coming in. They're building already. Just about all of them have started. They're building their plants in all states all over the country, and they're building incredible pharmaceutical plants. We're going to have close to 100% of our pharmaceuticals, in a very short period of time, made in the USA. As part of these agreements, Merck will also donate 3.5 tons of antibacterials to be placed in America's strategic reserve. Thank you very much. GSX will donate over 200 pounds of ingredients to make rescue inhalers, which is a big deal. And Bristol Myers Squibb will donate 6.5 tons of blood thinners. We appreciate it. Such amazing companies. Every president for a generation has promised to reduce drug prices, but they were talking about a little bit like that. I am the only one of them to ever even think in terms of favoured nations. And that's what this is. Favoured nations. It's called Most Favoured Nation. We are now a most favoured nation. I want to thank the leaders in the room. And I also want to thank the leaders of all of the countries that had to pay a little more so that we were treated fairly. I really do. I want to thank the leaders of countries, and they knew the alternative was not much of an alternative, because if they didn't do it, we're going to charge them tariffs, and the tariffs would have been much more severe than what they did. But they did do it as soon as they realised about the tariffs. Then they did it very easily. Now they have very good people. Many are doctors, and all, they ended up running the biggest businesses in the country. But you've done so much. And you made it a lot easier than we thought it would be. You were just, you understood to do the right thing. And as I was watching, and I know all of them, not personally, a couple of them personally, but I know them all through reading lots of business magazines and other magazines and newspapers. These are highly respected people. And I said to myself, look at what they've done. They've done something that, and as you said, something that you never thought was possible to get done. Most people thought, for the United States to have favourite nations where we have the lowest drug price in the world is unthinkable. And I said to myself, we have a thing called the Unaffordable Care Act. It's unaffordable because the insurance companies make so much money, and the insurance companies totally control the Democrats. And I said to myself, standing watching these great leaders, and we have 4 other leaders coming in, Johnson & Johnson, and 4 other very big companies actually, very great companies. They've all agreed, and they'll be coming in next week, and we appreciate them too. But they've agreed to the same thing. Lowest price anywhere in the world. I said, I think that the insurance companies, we should have a meeting and we should talk to them, because I would say that maybe with one talk, they would be willing to cut their prices by 50, 60 or 70%. They've made a fortune. They've had stock prices that have gone up 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and even 18. Think of this. They went up 1,800%. One of them went up numbers that nobody's ever seen before. There's nice return. Not a 2%, an 1,800% return. One went up more than that. Therefore, there's a lot of fat that can be cut. And I'd like to announce here, this is just an idea that I had standing here watching these great leaders saying that we're going to have the lowest prices anywhere in the world. Something that nobody would have thought possible, and they're going to come out great. But also donating incredible different medications. Medications that are world-famous medications that one or another of them make, and donating them in some cases for free or very, very low prices. And I said, you know, I'll bet you if I called a meeting of the insurance companies, the companies that are involved with healthcare costs, I would be willing to bet, I think that they would reduce their prices very, very substantial. We could have fair healthcare in the country. Now, my initial thought, and this is what I want to do as of right now, this is the alternative, is that all of the billions and billions, ultimately trillions and trillions of dollars that's paid to these companies, we're going to pay directly to the people. But there's another way of doing it, and that's getting the insurance companies to ease up and to cut their pricing way, way down and stay part of the system. So, I'm going to call a meeting. It could be in Florida this coming week, or it could be back in the White House the first week, not the second or third week. I'm going to call a meeting of the big insurance companies that have gotten so rich by receiving money and, really much, far, far more money than they're entitled to. And I have a feeling, maybe, if they would act like these incredible, brilliant, responsible citizens behind me, people that love our country and they love the world. I mean, frankly, they love these international companies for the most part. I'm going to call a meeting of the insurance companies. I'm going to see if they get their price down, to put it very bluntly. And I think that is a very big statement. And what happened here is the biggest statement of all, because nobody thought a thing like this was possible. And I think, based on that, I won't even take questions today, because there's no way I can take questions that are anywhere comparable to what you just witnessed. You just witnessed drug prices that will go down at levels never thought even possible, Marty. Right, never thought even possible. And I think that the second biggest part of this meeting is going to be the fact that I'm going to call in the insurance companies that are making so much money, and they have to make less, a lot less. And maybe we can have reasonable health care without having to cut them out and let it all go arise. So, we're going to be calling a meeting. It'll be either in Florida or it'll be here the first week. And I'd prefer not talking and asking questions, only for the reason that this is such a big announcement, meaning what these people have said and what the other 4 companies are going to say, which is exactly the same thing, that I really don't want to, soil it up by asking questions. Even questions that are very fair questions that I'd love to answer. So, I think we have to, just stop right here. I really appreciate the fact that these companies came here. These, again, you know, a lot of the media is not aware, not really, cognizant of the people standing behind me. These are the biggest executives in the world, and what they're doing today is monumental. And I want to stand it on that. And I'll see you later if you'd like, but I don't want to be asking questions having to do with anything else. I do want you to remember what I said about the 4.5%. We took 100% of the new workers was in the private sector, and we've cut tremendous numbers of government jobs, And that's why, if you look at our numbers, they're so good. Also, more than I don't know if you've read this came out a week ago. More than 50% of our trade deficit was cut. We cut it more than 50% in a period of a few months. Nobody thought any of these things were possible. Thank you very much, everybody.